we get started, you can just raise your hand and we'll get right to you, okay, to answer the question. All right. Welcome everyone to Avini Vibes. We're grateful to be here and we're so happy that you took time out of your schedule to join us. And it's exciting, as we were just saying while we're waiting for y'all to come on. It's growing. This family's growing, and it's certainly a blessing to be a part of the Avini family. Just a couple of housekeeping I say rules or laws, but let's just call them housekeeping issues. If you don't mind, just keep yourself muted for background noise. And then if you have a question, feel free to raise your hand and we'll get to your question during the evening. We'll keep this under an hour, just about an hour. If you have to leave early, that's okay. If you're a guest, get with the person that invited you if we don't answer the question that you might have. I'm your host, Christine Orlando, my co-host, Carol Witt, always there helping in the tech, and grateful. And I know Chip is with us. And tonight we're very excited. It's January 25th. 2024, and we are very, very thrilled to have somebody very special with us. We have our very own Doug Dickey. And for those of you who don't know Doug is part of Avini as the vice president of sales, but I don't even like to call him that because he's way more than that. He's the go-to guy when you have a question about the science, about anything to do with the products, as well as the team that's alongside with Neil Roth and Rick Deitch. But Doug is also very much had been involved with the expert is in fertilizer and plant nutrition. And Doug, before he came on, he went shopping for a few plants today. I was telling him, bought a couple jade plants and everything about fertilizer, but you've taught me a lot about that as well, because it's important what we put in our bodies. And that's what we're here about tonight, a good, healthy, clean body. So welcome to Avini Vibes tonight, Doug. Thank you for being with us, and the floor is yours. And again, we're grateful that you're here.
Awesome. Well, I'm glad to be here. A little bit about the fertilizer. It's kind of amazing having worked in the fertilizer industry and sending off I invented 4 different fertilizers and sending them off to have them tested for heavy metals, and they show up with 0 heavy metals in them. But the state, depending on each state you register the product in, I have to put the minimum standards as my result. They don't let me put 0, 0, 0, 0 for heavy metals. I have to put the minimums they're tested for. So that way I don't make other products look bad. And it's interesting, even with all of that, 15 years of experience in that, I was really unaware of what heavy metals do to the body, the bioaccumulation, the struggle your body has in getting rid of them, and essentially the disease, chronic disease that comes from the bioaccumulation of these heavy metals, how they compete with our good metals. And again, we think when we go on a detox or we take some sort of supplement that our body just magically gets rid of these metals, and they don't. The body stores them because it can't get rid of them, not at any level equal to what we're taking in. So that's kind of the message that I try to share with people, is that many of the issues that we go to the doctor for, the chronic diseases that we deal with, are, if not caused by, definitely aggravated by heavy metals in our body, specifically mercury, arsenic, cadmium, chromium, and lead. And they are at extremely high levels in our day-to-day activities. So for instance, in pesticides, they add arsenic and chromium and cadmium to pesticides to make them systemic, meaning they travel through the plant. You can't wash pesticides off plants nowadays because they're internal. And they add them to fertilizers. At first I couldn't understand. Maybe they're just trying to get the metals back out in the environment. They don't want to pay a bunch of money to put them in concrete and send them to Utah. So they send them to fertilizer dealers and they put them out in safe levels safe from each individual, square foot of land. But if you're eating vegetables, even organic, you're getting heavy metals in high doses into your body. So it's not the first salad or the 20th salad or even the 100th salad you eat, but it's 10 years of eating salads, and your body now has accumulated levels of arsenic. And we're talking about 1/10 the weight of a paper clip. So I'll show you a paper clip here. We're talking 1/10 the weight of that will kill you in an hour of arsenic in your body. 1/10,000th of that is causing chronic disease. So when you eat rice every day, and there's arsenic in rice, one of the highest concentration of arsenic in food, behind with chicken as second. Arsenic is going into our bodies, and the bodies can't find enough places to store it, and it starts to interact with cellular activities. And it's a 5-minute search online to see what arsenic is in, how much it's causing disease, all the diseases it causes. It only takes 5 minutes at Google, and you can read 10, 15 different NIH studies that talk about the cause of it. That's just arsenic. How about cadmium? My thought was, well, I don't smoke, I don't eat batteries. How could I possibly have cadmium in my system, right? I don't work in a mine. So interesting enough, cadmium is one of the 3 heavy metals that they use to make fertilizers systemic, to get more nutrition into the plant. So of course you get more nutrition, but you also end up having to deal with the heavy metal. They add it to chicken feed, as I mentioned earlier. Why, you might ask, would you add it to chicken feed, knowing it's a class 1 carcinogenic heavy metal? Well, they don't want the chicken feed to grow mold and mildew, which would kill the chickens. And so by putting a small amount of arsenate and cadmium, arsenate, of course, turns into arsenic. It's a derivative. When it's oxidized, becomes arsenic. You put that in the feed and it won't grow mildew or mold. So apparently nobody was thinking about, well, what are the chickens for? Oh, that's right. People are going to eat these. Maybe we shouldn't put heavy metals in their feed. And so small amounts, again, if you eat 1 chicken, it's not going to harm you. Maybe a chicken every week, it's going to take 10 years to build up. So people say, well, gosh, I'm getting 50, my knees hurt, my back's sore, I've got a, kind of a fat little stomach, it's just I'm getting old. Maybe it's just 5 decades of buildup of arsenic, cadmium, chromium, lead, and mercury. And so these are things that we deal with that NIH says 96% of all diseases that we deal with at the hospitals nowadays are caused by 5 heavy metals. And that's a simple Google search away. There are, and what's interesting is you start reading into NIH talking about heavy metals. 1982, they came out and said that this will be, so the 5 heavy metals will be the reason for most people fighting disease. And here we are 50 years later, or 45 years later. So kind of interesting. The problem is not known by anybody. When you go to the doctor and they tell you you have a blood sugar issue, do they tell you to stay away from rice and chicken and other things that contain arsenic? No, they tell you to stop eating ding-dongs and ho-hos at 2 a.m. And the issue is that they don't understand, or they don't communicate that to you, because I don't think they have they don't have a fix for it. There's nothing they can sell you that's going to help you stay away from arsenic. And so we introduced this. So if you see the problem and you go, okay, I accept that there's maybe a heavy metal issue, I'm taking them in my body. You can, of course, test what's in your urine by testing the urine. You could also take the blood, test what's in the blood. But the thing you can't test is how much is in your tissue and your bone. You can test it one time through cremation, but that's the only time you get to test it. So you don't really know all of the heavy metals and toxins that are stored in the body. And when I say heavy metals, they are the most important. There are volatile organic compounds, dioxins, toluene, benzenes. Those, of course, will also harm you, but it takes longer and it's much less effective at harming you. Next would be endocrine disruptive chemicals, metabolism disruptive chemicals, plastics, microplastics, other toxins that harm us. And so if the medical establishment was aware that a biochemist had taken something natural, like a zeolite, has the right frequency, the body recognizes it, and he had invented machinery to make this a cage that's very small, half a micron, let's say sub 1 micron, that's still intact. It's not broken into shards. It's still a cube shaped. It's been cleaned of all these toxins, metals, chemicals, mycotoxins that have been in it for millions of years, because of course, this is a mineral that was invented or made by volcanoes. And so its purpose, of course, this zeolite called clinoptilite, its purpose is to pull these toxins in from the environment and pull them away and store them away forever from organic life beings, right? Trees and animals and people. Pulls it inside the cage and stores them away. So this biochemist takes this zeolite, cleans it, makes it the right size, invents a 34-step process, takes 4 days to clean the zeolite, get all these toxins out, finds out it doesn't work as well when you clean it out. So he invents a way to activate it, to make it so it's stronger with a stronger negative charge inside. And then he gets it to a point where it's going to absorb into the bloodstream. So we put these drops in. I've misplaced mine. Put these drops in our mouth. Each drop has around 200,000 particles. Again, we're talking less than a micron size particle. Completely cleaned, activated, micronized, goes into the bloodstream, starts grabbing these metals from the bloodstream, from the lymphatic system. Doesn't go into the tissue, doesn't go up into the brain, simply stays in the circulatory system, passively grabbing only heavy metals, leaves the potassium, the calcium, the magnesium alone. And people say, well, how does it know to take the mercury and arsenic and cadmium and not the potassium and magnesium and calcium? Because the good metals, potassium is at the very bottom of the electrolytic scale. Mercury is at the top. So it wants the strongest charge, smallest metal in the cage. So it's going to grab the mercury first, then it's going to grab the lead, it's going to grab antimony, it's going to grab arsenic, cadmium, chromium. It's going to make its way down this heavy metals list. It's never going to get to the calcium and magnesium and potassium at the bottom of the list, because it's filling up with these big metals. And then it's going to pull them inside the cage. It's going to continue flowing through the body until it reaches a neutral charge. And then it's going to go through the liver. Liver sees it and says, oh, this is zeolite. Guy's eating dirt. Passes it on through. Does not burden the liver as if a bunch of metals were coming through and causing the liver to stop and process them. Then it gets to the kidneys. goes out through the kidneys because the kidneys go, oh my gosh, this person's constantly eating dirt. Kicks it out through the kidneys, out through the urine. The cage actually hides the heavy metals from the body. When they go inside the cage and they create the alkaline charge around it, it is hiding those metals from the liver and the kidneys. They no longer exist as far as the body's concerned. So homeostasis of the electrolytes of the blood is how we get more toxins to flow from the tissue, from the bone, from the fat, back into the bloodstream. Of course, this is also the reason that we feel a detox effect, because the body doesn't know where these poisons are coming from, because they're part of a natural homeostasis seeping into the bloodstream. So those toxins go out, the next zeolite comes through, grabs the next toxins, and now you're removing these toxins at a faster rate than you're taking them in. It's assumed that we're taking in about 3 to 5 times our natural excretion rate of heavy metals and toxins and chemicals. If the zeolite at 10 drops twice a day, through the different studies that Rick did, shows that we're removing it up to 15 times the rate that our excretion rate could get rid of them on their own. So that's a huge benefit. That's only at 2 droppers. What if people are taking 4 or 6 or 8 or 10 droppers, 150 drops a day? Would that rate be increased? Now, we don't have a study for that, but I think we will sometime in the future here, because that's something we want to know. But we do know that people have amazing results when they take a little more. They get their body used to taking more of the zeolite into the bloodstream. We're maxed out at about 15 drops per hour that the average person can take of the zeolite in the bloodstream. So you can take 2 or 3 drops an hour, you can take 10 or 15, it's up to you. But if people knew, if the system knew that this product existed, I don't know if it would make them stop what they're doing and adopt what we're doing. The cool thing is, this product originally was invented. Rick would have never spent the money and time to create a clean, micronized and activated zeolite unless he knew that he was going to be able to recoup his costs on it by providing it to doctors as a way to get chemotherapy out of the body. That was sort of his initial response, was if I can remove chemo after it's done its work, then it'll be beneficial and he would be able to recoup his expenses. That's why nobody else goes to the trouble of cleaning their zeolite, inventing machinery to do this. Rick did it for the purpose of, he's a pharmaceutical biochemist, and he was in the chemotherapy production mindset. So this value, of course, we have without having to worry about chemotherapy. We can use this to remove regular toxins that are being brought into our body. And the powerful thing with this is it's fairly gentle on the body. You may feel a little bit of a detox. That's why the rest of our products exist, to support this cell defender product that goes into the bloodstream and lymphatic system and removes it. And the miracle that I see really could be put into one sentence: a natural mineral that the body recognizes, knows how to get rid of. It's not going to store the zeolite. It's natural and it knows how to get rid of it. It's going to, so that aspect, that frequency that's natural. And second of all, it's been bioteched to make it small enough, clean enough, and activated to be stronger than normal, to grab these metals and toxins, pull them inside. Those two combinations, natural and high tech, is why we have something that can remove these toxins independent of whatever the body wants, and along with the body. And that to me, I think, is the miracle, the magic in what we have. Rick Deitch and his appeal to try to help people that are on chemotherapy. That's what we have. Any questions that somebody has? I'll open up for questions if you'd like, Christine.
Sure. Does anyone have a question? Want to raise your hand and we'll open up your mic? Don't be shy. We have one of the best with us here tonight. So I'll have a question while we're waiting for someone else. So someone gets their bottle of Cell Defender and they start on their bottle of Cell Defender. How long should they take their Cell Defender, Doug?
It's a very, very good question. Yeah, some people say forever. I love Rick's answer, although it's not my answer. He says, okay, if you're not eating or breathing or drinking, you can stop anytime. I love that answer. However, I've tried to figure it out from my own experience. I had some issues with my colon, had issues with my body. And I happened to go back and look through a few hundred video testimonials at the Avini Health training site where Rich had put everything in there. And I started keeping track. I said, okay, those people that had issues that their body helped fix, let's say, if it was tied to the blood or lymphatic system, it seemed like the time frame was 8 weeks that they noticed a considerable difference, 6 to 8 weeks. And I noticed that I had certain results happen within about 8 weeks. And so I thought, I wonder what's happening at this 6 to 8 weeks. And then those that had issues where they maybe had a time stamp, they were going to, we'll say, expire at a certain time. And they got results. It seemed like it was about 4 months, about 16 weeks. And then I started comparing the rate at which people were taking product. I was taking 150 to 200 drops a day. So I was taking about every hour, 10 to 15 drops. Other people were taking 10 drops every hour of the day. Others were taking 5. Some are taking it twice or 3 times a day. And I sort of extrapolated that. And my belief system, and this is from the Book of Doug, the apocryphal Book of Doug, is that if you were on the product at a higher than normal dose, let's say 6 times a day, 10 drops each time, if you can get up to that point, which may take a few weeks because of the detox effects that naturally happen due to this homeostasis of the blood, you would expect, as I did, that it has enough time to clean out the bloodstream and the lymphatic system. That as stuff's flowing around, there's not a lot of metals in that solution, in the circulatory system. I think that takes 6 to 8 weeks at this more than maintenance level. If you're going to also clean the organs, which is next, as things flow back into the bloodstream, every 6 months, you're cleaning 40% of all the cells in your body, you're replacing them. So toxins are flowing back to the liver at that time, can be captured in this blood flow, in this lymphatic fluid, and removed. If you're doing it for, let's say, 16 weeks, I believe that the organs are mostly cleaned up by that time. So again, if we're removing the toxins mechanically, without the body's permission, because the body's going to get rid of the zeolite, we know, in every 6 to 8 hours. And we know the zeolite's going to attract these heavy metals and take them out. So if we're doing that, my guesstimate from what I've seen is that it takes about 4 months at the higher than normal level. After that, I think you could probably stop and you've bought yourself 5 years, maybe 10 years. But what if you don't stop? Let's say I'm taking a bottle of this at 50. Let's say I'm buying the 5-pack on auto ship. Now I'm getting it for about $40 a bottle. I'm going through 5 bottles a month. That's $200. That's cheaper than some people's coffee budget. If you could take that and stay with that for a year or two, what could that do for your body? Because in 2 years' time, maybe 50% of your body has replaced all of the cells, right? Some of our bones don't get replaced for about 20 years. Certain tissue and muscles, cartilage is only replaced like every 12. So what if you could do it 12 years? That could make a huge difference. Not counting what's coming in. If I'm taking the fiber, if I'm taking the immunity, I'm taking the plus hydration, I'm getting it into my gut, and it's keeping the metals and toxins from coming in from the foods that I'm eating today. So I'm not on the same plane that I was on before I knew about the products. So when people say, how long should I take it? I say minimum 8 weeks. Take the high dose, get up to the high dose, whatever time frame that takes, stay on it for 8 weeks. See how you feel in 8 weeks. I mean, there's people with better eyesight, better sleep, more energy. We actually have mechanisms that are shown on NIH, how that happens, why that happens, how ATP is released, and you get all the energy has been bound up because arsenic is being displaced by the zeolite. Here's one more thought I want to make a point of. In the last few months, I've been doing, I'm guessing, 150 to 200 meetings a month. And as I start learning a few things, I recognize something. In one of the studies that Rick had done, he had shown, the question was asked, is the zeolite removing calcium and magnesium, potassium? So they did a study where they tracked the amount in the body coming out, what was going in. And they found that there was between an 8 and 14 times increase in things like calcium and magnesium and potassium, depending on the ratios of each thing. And so their belief system was that as you displace the mercury, just by it disappearing into the zeolite, you now make calcium, magnesium, and potassium in a higher available ratio. But I started to go through the numbers on that, work backwards on them. And what I think is really happening, and I ran this by Rick, and he agrees that I may be correct on this, although we don't have a study proving it, is that maybe the kidney's purpose of balancing the electrolytes in the bloodstream, again, keeping homeostasis of the electrolytes, which both is pH and electrical capacity or electrolytic gradient, that when we bind up a mercury and the potassium and the calcium and magnesium, maybe the body is not getting rid of it at the same rate. Think of it as if you have $1,000 bill and all of a sudden it disappears. Now you're more interested in the nickels and pennies and dimes that are in the couch. If you're binding up this highly charged, very small metal like mercury, that its electrical value is connected to, let's say, 8 to 10 to maybe 14 potassium and magnesium, your body might be dumping the magnesium and potassium at such a great rate, because it has the mercury or the arsenic or the cadmium. And that may be the issue. Not that we're not absorbing magnesium and potassium, which are always deficient in our bodies, but it's the fact that they're at the bottom, they're the pennies and the nickels in the system. And so they're not as valuable as mercury as far as an electrolyte. And so maybe our bodies are holding on to the magnesium and the potassium much greater and not getting rid of it, because it comes in with lots and lots of food, has magnesium and potassium in it. So why is our body not absorbing it, not maintaining it, holding on to it? I think it's because of the displacement of these metals. As you bind up the metals, these things come up in higher ratios. I think it makes sense that maybe the body's holding on to it. So just a thought from the book of Doug, but I did run it past Rick, and he agrees that the body's going to have more purpose with the potassium and the magnesium and the calcium if the mercury and arsenic and cadmium are missing from the electrolyte process in the blood. So Any questions on that?
Yeah,
I'm open to discuss.
I did see someone's hand raised, but did you have a question? I thought it was Angela. Angela, go ahead and unmute and go ahead. You can ask your question.
Thanks, Doug. Great call here. I was wondering how many drops should we tell somebody to put in the rice, and do you put that when it's cooking after, or what's the best way to put it in your rice?
I heard that first from Kyle about 3 years ago, that it was just one drop. Is that correct, Kyle?
No, we usually do about 10 drops or so when we make rice. I would say that's kind of our average. Honestly, half the time it's just like, okay, that's good. We've never had a method to it.
Yeah. And it drops the it improves the flavor.
Oh, it's crazy. You've done it now, Doug, right?
Yep. Oh, we do it all the time.
You do it side by side. You make one pot of rice regular and one pot with detox. It visually looks different and it tastes night and day different. It's amazing.
Wow. Does it matter then, Kyle, if somebody cooks a bigger amount of rice, do you put more in, or, I don't know.
Mean, honestly, there's no science behind this, or no like instructions. We just figured this out a long time ago, and we just add it what we feel. I mean, obviously, can't hurt, might help. I would imagine a little more is probably better than a little less.
Well, I was just thinking some people maybe make a really big pot of it, and mine make just a single serving or whatever,
I mean, I'd still put 5 or 10 drops minimum.
Gotcha. Okay. Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Welcome.
Great call.
Do you want to hear an interesting side note? So I spent a day going through trying to figure out why does rice have such a high percentage of arsenic in it? Anybody ever wonder that? Why rice is, parts per billion and everything else, it's parts per trillion. You go back to the 20s, there was a mildew, type of mold or mildew that was growing on the rice. So you could cook rice, and if you put it aside for 8 or 10 hours, it would grow this little mycotoxin on the rice. You couldn't see it, and it was killing thousands of people. They were consuming the rice that had sat out for 6 or 8 hours at room temperature, and it had grown this invisible little mycotoxin, and it was killing people. So what they discovered is they could add arsenic in the storage of the rice, and it would stop the mycotoxins from growing and harming, being on the rice. And so that's where it first started, is it was used as a preservative. This is also why they started using arsenic as a preservative for chicken feed. So it's actually linked directly to that. They went back, because you haven't heard of people dying from eating rice. In the 20s, it was rampant. Again, there was tens of thousands of people that were dying. And so they started storing the rice in the preservative of arsenic. And that's kind of continued through it. It's not because it's grown and pulls more out of the soil, like many people say.
What about wine? There's, discussion about the wine industry using arsenic as well.
Yeah, so on that, anytime you're going by let's say like we'll say a blueberry farm. I'll just use that as an example. I'll come back to the wine. I once talked to this blueberry grower. Again, I have a fertilizer that saves plants. And so I got a call, went out there. He told me how he had bought land that used to be in apples. They'd ripped all the apple trees out, and the arsenic and the pesticides were sprayed about 13 times a year onto these apples. So all of the overspray would end up on the ground, and they had these high levels of arsenic in the soil, so high that the apples couldn't be sold anymore. So then they went into alfalfa and some other stuff for a couple of years and hauled that away. They couldn't sell it because it's high in arsenic. And then they went into blueberries after the period of time they were supposed to wait. And the blueberries were so toxic and arsenic that nobody would take them. So they sold them at the street as locally grown blueberries to try to recoup the money because they would have to test it in other places. So since then I've been very wary of locally grown signs where they're selling because there's nobody testing that. Just the honesty of whatever farmer. But grapes are the same way. They'll rip out apples that have been in for 25 years, and then they'll put grapes in there, and the grapes are extracting the arsenic. And it, of course, they're squeezing grapes, so they're getting all the fluids, and the arsenic flows right into the wine and is part of the wine. So they do use sulfur and some other metal rods that they'll put into the tank that will attract the arsenic, but you can't get all of it out. So it's pretty common. Sulfur is another one of those things that they use to control the fermentation process. So there's like low sulfur wines out there, and then there's a lot of other things that are done. Nobody wants to see how the sausage is made. Yes, Ed.
Hey, Doug. Question, I think a lot of us probably get, I know I do. How do you address someone that says, I really don't want to interfere and put cell defender in my body because I'm taking these medications?
Yeah. So Rick has a wonderful statement. There are no products that Avini sells that will have any contraindications to any medicines out there that people are taking, with the exception of platinum chemotherapy, where you have to stop the day before you take it, wait 2 full days, and then you can start taking cell defender again. But everything else, including anti-rejection drugs, which I had a long discussion, then did a little bit of research to show that I'd covered my bases. Even anti-rejection drugs from, let's say, a kidney transplant or other issues like that. So no contraindications whatsoever. Now I will mention one thing. When you take cell defender and you put it in water, if there is magnesium chloride, sodium chloride, any other type of electrolytes that are in that water, the zeolite will grab the metal and rip it away from the chloride, where it won't attack metals in your body like titanium knees or stainless steel, whatever. It will grab the magnesium or the potassium from the chloride. And then chlorides have reactions. They're very, very reactive, again, based on chlorine. And so some people will have reactions from the chloride or the chlorine because the zeolite grabbed and pulled the metal away from it, right? If it's the only thing in that water. So that's the one of the things that people will notice is you can taste something different about the water or something. If you add it to it, that's because it's just simply separating those two. But other than that, there's no process that the zeolite that I'm aware of, or as Rick has said, that it'll harm anybody.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Doug.
Any other questions? What about,
Gary here. I got a
go ahead,
question.
Gary.
Doug, this is Gary in Maine, and I liked your analogy of the nickels and dimes in the sofa.
Yeah.
My question relates to the Avini Plus hydration. And how does one, using lay language, explain the sugars to the average person that will look at sugars and they're counting calories, that sort of thing? What's some lay languaging in explaining why that's in the plus hydration?
Lay language has me. I don't say anything in lay language. I would say when something gets smaller, from a baseball to a golf ball, the surface area becomes larger. Okay. When you break something into smaller pieces, the surface area becomes larger for the electrical charge that's within it. So the muscle requires more than just water and electrolytes. It requires glycogen to take it in. So the body can take time to move the glycogen with the electrolytes and the water into the muscle. When it's in our product, because of the size of the sugar, it literally has to do with the size. It changes the electrical signature. So it grabs it and pushes it right into the muscle immediately. It makes the muscle is an environment that the sugar and the water and the electrolyte want to be in electrically. And so it just rushes right into the muscle. So it doesn't give it time to sit in your gut and then be flushed out while it's waiting for glycogen and other factors to adopt it, to bring it into the tissue. So it's really just, it wants, because of the size of the sugar, it really has to do with this surface area in charge, and the electrolytes and the water, they go directly into the muscle very quickly in the body. Where if they're separate and the sugar has to be supplied by the body, there's a good chance the water is going to be peed out along with the electrolytes, and you don't get the benefit. And I think a lot of issues, what we're finding with people who start taking plus hydration and all of a sudden they're breathing better, or they have issues with back pain and it goes away, or neck pain and it goes away. I think many of us are not hydrated in specific organs or specific areas of the body. Sort of like a sponge. If you have this sponge, like a loofah sponge, and you're putting a drip of water down the middle of it, and it's of course drying or evaporating, you may never fill the whole sponge with water. It just keeps hitting the same spot. It only absorbs out and drips off the bottom to a certain point. And I think maybe the water that we take, because it's not prepared to go into the muscle, that we're not becoming hydrated in our lungs and our tissues within the body. I think that's why plus hydration is needed for everybody.
Could I have a swing at that one, Doug?
Question.
Yes, absolutely.
So I was abducted last night, and the guy in the spaceship was Doug Dickey. And I learned all this stuff from him when I came back down to talk to you guys. So no, he'll know where I stole this term from, but I like it with our plus hydration because he has an agricultural background also. So Gary, just trying to boil that down to something you can say kind of quickly to a regular person. What are the things that water does for us? Carries in nutrients, carries away waste, and it plumps up every cell to make it a better cushion. So if we made water wetter so that more of all those things was done, that would be good. And essentially that's what the plus hydration does. So Doug's sitting there saying, okay, I remember where he got that. In agriculture, it was surfactants, that cause things to go into soil better. But I've stolen that and brought it to our hydration product. It makes water wetter. And I think people understand that pretty quick. And those three simple things that water does: brings in the nutrients, carries away the waste, and it plumps up the cells to make it more cushioned. And I have to say, I've been amazed, especially if somebody starts using Cell Defender and the other detoxolite containing products. Remember, they're taking a shower on the inside several times a day. Well, that takes water, right? So that can tend to make you use more water. So we used to just say, consume some more water. But now we can say, that's probably simply your body calling for more water. And we've just introduced a product that's amazing for hydration. We actually call it plus hydration. And so if you're not feeling better fast, or you get some weird little feeling that, you're not just, everything's feeling better right away, oftentimes you can respond with more water using plus hydration and wind up a great solution. And it works beautifully into the conversation that way. So that was just a little for you, Gary. So thank you for that moment.
Thank you. Thank you
Thanks,
both.
Chip.
Mhm. Makes water wetter. Any other questions? Anyone else want to raise their hand and ask Doug a question while we have him here? Oh, we've got a shy group tonight. This is
Well, let me tell everybody something I'm working on. I've been working on my presentation for a while. I've gotten it much better. It won't be so wordy. You'll have more pictures, but it'll be very concise at sharing what the problem is, educating people quickly on the issue with heavy metals, connecting that to disease, and then selling the point that we can remove these metals and toxins, and then kind of leaving it at that. People can take the next step for themselves and figure out how the body can fix itself. And then it goes into explanation of each of the products, and then into what we want people to do, to get involved in some fashion. And that will be on in the back office. It'll be in the app that you can share it. And then I'm also going to do a video where I go through the presentation that people can use. But part of that is I'm also putting together a set of, let's say, 4 or 5 page brochure, if you will. And the first page will, let's say, use, it'll be, let's say, dentists. I'm talking to dentists. Dentists don't want to become network marketers. They want to do dentistry, right? However, they have patients who could have a great deal of success by using our products. I know of several people that have put the Plus Relief Gel on their face and cheeks a day or two before, spray the oral spray in their mouth, go in, and there's no pain whatsoever for the dental work. The inflammation isn't there either for even serious dental work. So on this first page, it will talk about all the benefits of the Plus Relief, the nano silver. Anybody have experienced that with oral challenges? The cell defender and the benefits of the pH strengthening process in the bloodstream, where the attraction of the metals into the cage actually causes this alkaline charge to go around the zeolite and help that. So it'll explain those things, selling the dentist on the benefit of these products to his patients. The next page will give some more details on sort of the challenges with toxins and heavy metals. It will talk about the connections of how these products work. So it'll give information on each of the products. And then the last page will be on how that dentist can use the cooperative structure that we have at Avini, the trinary system that allows people to get involved and not have to buy anything. After their activation pack, they don't have to buy anything on a monthly basis. They can be a wholesale buyer. Of course, we have the retail side of it. And then, of course, they can get involved and participate as a distributor. But the volume of all three goes to the organization. And that way, they can take their patients that come in for dental work and they can plug them into the Avini structure. And some might be network marketers that want to continue to share their product experiences with others. They might be able to continue. So that way the dentist can actually become an active distributor without becoming an active distributor, because he's running his influence through the business. Imagine that same article that shows how that's done, gives directions to the secretary, what to do for each option. What if that was for chiropractors too? What if on the chiropractor's office wall, he has posters that show heavy metals, what they do to the body, and nothing at the bottom except for Avini Health. So people going through the doctor's office can start to read information on the problem with heavy metals, the causes of disease caused by these heavy metals, which are well known. So he can get sort of a kit. And imagine this as chiropractors, pediatricians, imagine massage therapists, people that work in energy work with different type of frequencies. This paperwork I'm putting together over the next few weeks, I've got a couple of them about halfway done, that will be beautiful full color, that will be able to take and download and print, send out to people, and start to bring our professionals into the process without them having to leave their work and become a distributor, so to speak. They're still a distributor, but they don't have to be actively doing anything. Their secretary can put the information in. So that's something that I'm putting together that I just wanted to share that will be available here, I'm guessing, within the next 2-3 weeks.
That's
So-
very exciting, Doug. We appreciate it. I know we had conversation about that with, we have a doctor from out west, a
Armand.
pediatric cardiologist. We did a call with, he used to be here on the East Coast and now he's out on the West Coast. And I know you and I and him, we had talked and you brainstorm on some of that. So we're very excited to have that resource available for our professionals. What about, this is maybe a little out of the box perhaps, but you and I had talked about the wave or the sound healing, a little bit about frequencies you mentioned tonight. You know, I know with water, there's different frequencies and all, as we talked earlier. Do you want to comment, or can you just give a little bit of insight to that? How Avini can perhaps tie into that?
You know, Rick is a pharmaceutical biochemist, and where he believes and has taught on energy systems and frequencies and the benefits, he doesn't get too much into it. And I've been on some calls where he has gotten into the weeds on it, and I was writing stuff down left and right. So he's really he's really well versed on frequencies and energies and the importance throughout the body. And he helped get some machine licensed with the FDA. I can't remember exactly what it was, but he's been involved in that. But he doesn't get into talking about the frequencies that are in the cell defender. He doesn't really exaggerate the value of the silver and the terahertz frequency that it puts off and the benefits of that. So we sort of gloss over that. We know that people will experience incredible experiences with the products. And so he kind of leaves it at that. He doesn't really want to have the woo-woo as part of the sales pitch. He likes the idea that we have studies that support our experiences, and we have testimonials, so almost 1,500 of them at avinihealthtraining.com that people can go and look at. Of course, those are all subjective, but then you have data, you have studies that we list in there, and Rick continues to plan to do more and more clinical studies, double-blind studies, things that we want to know about how the cell defender functions. There's hundreds of studies on 1316 beta glucans and the benefit from this immunity. We have people that are sharing incredible experiences of how the bad thoughts don't go into their mind anymore with 4 of these a day. And I'm doing a Zoom tomorrow with somebody who has been in and out of institutions and no longer has those thoughts on 4 of the immunity pills a day. So really, really powerful. Tons of studies on the on clinoptilite, independent of our company and our product. So we have lots of studies that we can point to. Any one of these products we have, probably including even Plus Energy, could be its own company. It could support the massive growth of its own company. The silver for sure. Plus hydration is amazing. Cell defender, of course, fiber, the fiber that we have. So there's there's, I think, a direction that we want to go is more towards studies and data, and just know that the frequency part has been well thought out ahead of time for each product.
Christine, Sandra has her hand up.
Sandra, please unmute yourself and feel free to ask a question.
Hi, everybody. Doug, I
Yeah.
love the hydration. The taste makes my husband want to drink it as if it's just a regular beverage. I said, no, you can't do that. My question is, should I put hydration in a bottle and drink it all throughout the day, as opposed to having a nice glass of it in the morning?
You certainly can. What Rick has said is it's best not to leave it sitting there for 5 or 6 or 7 hours because it loses some of its potency over time. So it is better to drink it, let's say, within an hour or two, and then let it do its thing in your body. But there's no limitation on how much to take. He does say, though, it forces hydration in the muscle. So if you're exercising, you're really going to notice the difference. If you're sitting around watching TV, it's going to hydrate those. You may feel like you're, feel plump because it's going to hydrate your muscles and you're not exerting them. So it does work better, and the results are better for those who are active. And where you might normally be exhausted, your muscles might be exhausted, you won't feel that with our product.
So taking it twice a day really is not recommended?
No, it's absolutely recommended, but twice a day, if you're sitting on the couch the whole day, probably not.
None of us would be doing that.
Amazing. Some people do sit on the couch all day. The important thing is it's there to help you strengthen the muscles, to hydrate the muscles. If you're, sitting down all day long, sleeping all day long, it's not as beneficial for you at 2 times a day as it might be for just 1. So again, it forces hydration. That's the cool thing. It helps the body hydrate at a deeper level. So the plus hydration doesn't have a downside. There's nothing that can harm you with it, but it's more benefit if you're active.
Thank you.
Doug, I have a question,
Yes.
and it's the plus hydration. I have been doing it since Dallas, and I used to have horrible leg cramps wake me up at night. I no longer have it, but I'm only drinking it at night before I go to bed because I'm worried that if I do it during the day, I'm going to have these cramps. Do you feel like whether I drink it at night or I drink it in the morning, when I drink it, they're gone. They are absolutely gone, but I don't want them back either. So I'm afraid to not drink it at night.
Yeah, I would say drinking it throughout the day, you'd probably have the same benefits at night. Again, it's about getting the muscle tissue hydrated, and it really requires all 3 of these components, as Chip says, to make the water wetter. As I've been going to Florida about every 2 weeks and spending some time there with Rick, writing this presentation and stuff and asking questions. And I've been learning a ton about the value of surface area and electrical charge. And these are sort of like magical aspects to how things work. And the plus hydration is resolving lots of issues by moving water into the muscle tissue. And if you can take it, you notice how much volume you need to get, a bottle going. That's important. Again, we're talking about these ratios to the water. So the amount that you use really does matter at getting water into the muscle tissue. So as long as you're taking it consistently, you're going to have great results with it.
I have a thought about your office brochure topic, Doug.
Mhm.
I think that's neat, and I bet it gets used a lot. because people wonder how to approach and what to say and how that business structure might look. The thing that I would add to the conversation, I don't know necessarily add to the brochure, but almost everybody and a lot of people probably even on this call have an office, and exotic healthcare practitioners, chiropractors, everybody, dentists, as you were talking, they're kind of proud of that location. Look at my beautiful office in the office complex or in my building. Cool thing about what we do with Avini, to show where you work, you have to have a map of North America. And for those people that have an office, I'll often point out to them, it's really cool. It's a beautiful office. I love it. But your footprint, when you join something like Avini and then somebody joins you, it can go to all North America and it will soon start jumping country to country. Doug knows that. I know that. I don't know how long it'll take us to get to the point that we're have our foundation here like we want it to be and get good, like going on into Canada. But we know that'll happen. And so you'll need a globe to show where you work. And I think that's a cool thought to me. It's a cool thought, especially in an office environment.
Good point. Good point. Well, I just want to say this in layman's terms. I play tennis, and ever since I've been playing, I play with the coach of the West Point girls team, and he's really tough on me. And ever since I've been doing cell defender, and he would say, "Wow, you're getting better, Christine. You can play longer, harder." And since I added the plus hydration, it's just even took me one step even higher and better. So the water wetter is really helping me tremendously as an athlete. So just want to, thank everyone for joining us tonight. We're over the time. But if anybody has one last question or comment, please raise your hand because we had, Suzanne has a quick question. Go ahead, Suzanne. Suzanne, go ahead and unmute yourself and we'll let you be the last question tonight before we let everyone go on with their evening.
Okay, it's not a question. I just so appreciate Doug's passion and integrity, how he was in the fertilizer aspect, appreciating the tons, the deluge of toxins going into food and plants. And now Avini is so perfect as a stage for that to continue. So I very, very much appreciated everything he said.
Thank you, Suzanne, for making that comment. And it's ditto, I'm sure, for the rest of us around here tonight. Suzanne is a very well-known author. If for those of you who don't know, she's actually going to be our guest speaker on February 22nd. So mark your calendar for that. And then next week we have Pablo Miguel. He didn't come on camera with us tonight, but he'll be joining us on Avini Vibes next weekend, all the way from Las Vegas. But I want to once again thank everyone here for being here. Doug, Chip, thank you, Doug. It's always a pleasure to have you with us this evening. You're a brilliant man, as I did your intro today on an email, and that's what I exactly said. You can't get into a conversation with Doug with wanting more. I wish we had more time, so we'll just look at having you back as a guest. And thank you, Doug, and thank you everyone for joining us. Go out and share Avini. Remember, it's one person at a time. You never know who's praying or asking for help, and you may have the answer. You do have the answer. Thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful evening.
Thank
Good
you,
night,
Doug.
Tom.
Bye. Bye,
Thank you.
everyone. Bye, everyone.
Bye,
Hi,
everyone.
guys. Thank you, Doug.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.